Okay, my name is Richard Anthony. I'm the moderator of this panel. I'm the chair of the Zero Waste International Alliance and on the board of directors of Zero Waste USA and Zero Waste San Diego. This is on resource recovery parks. The one thing I wanted to say is what we're finding out now, after focusing a lot on single families and multifamilies, a lot of the stuff coming into the landfills and the incinerators and transfer station is being self-hauled by businesses and mom and pop. And so this is a whole area that is opening up for recovery and reuse. And in that line, I want to introduce Ruth Abbey. Ruth Abbey has been a consultant for over 20 years. She wrote the LA Zero Waste Plan along with some other of us, and she is the president of Zero Waste USA and very active in her own community in Alameda County, California. Ruth, it's all yours.
Thanks, Rick, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour of Zero Waste, the resource recovery parks, and we'll just sort of start out with some definitions. Here's a concept piece provided by Urban Ore, which is a mission-driven reuse organization in Berkeley. And the idea is that this is the universe of total recycling. We should plan for total recycling or zero waste, where everything has an opportunity to be reused, recycled, or composted. So this is the concept of a resource recovery park. And then here's the 12 categories, the 12 market categories for discarded materials. This has been developed by Urban Ore and further enhanced by Richard Anthony Associates to really identify what are the 12 materials that we typically throw away that can be reused, recycled, or composted. And so if you look at this list, textiles, polymer, reused chemicals, metals, glass, ceramics, paper, above that line are everything that can be reused or recycled. And then below that line, plant debris, putrescibles, which include food, soils, wood, and some papers are everything that are a recipe for compost. So thank you, Rick, for providing that image. This is what we're going to go with. If you look at the waste characterization studies that are performed around the country, everything that's in the trash can really be sorted into these market categories for reuse, recycling, and composting. Here's another concept piece that was developed with Urban Ore and Richard Anthony Associates for an organization in the UK, which is essentially this idea of everything in its place, all 12 master categories coming in either on a route truck or self-haul, and you can drop things off, pick things up, and that's really the concept of the resource recovery park. Here's a real world example of a resource recovery center in El Cerrito, California. You can see the similarity between the concept for the UK version and for this actual resource recovery center in El Cerrito. Any kind of thing that you can think of that you can reuse and recycle can be dropped off at this facility. This facility just celebrated its 50th anniversary. It was created by volunteers in the 70s, and it's still going strong. And then we also have the concept of a serial MRF. A serial MRF is not all in one place. It just means that you have some place for all of these materials to go, and they could be located throughout the community. So in the Berkeley serial MRF, they have a Urban Ore, which is located in the west side of town, and then they have the transfer station where a number of other activities go on, and then they have other places to drop off and recycle. That's the concept of a serial MRF. And I'm going to read these definitions because this is something that we've just provided so that we could kind of all get on the same page, that a resource recovery park is the co-location of reuse, recycling, and compost collection, processing, and manufacturing and retail businesses and or nonprofits in a central facility to which the public can bring all their 12 market categories of recoverable and discarded materials at one time. So that's our concept of a resource recovery park. A resource recovery center, and you saw that example in El Cerrito, is a location where the public can bring all their 12 categories of market materials at one time, but does not include the processing or manufacturing on site and may not include retail sales. And then a serial MRF is basically the regionally co-located but decentralized version of a resource recovery park addressing reuse recycling, compost collection, processing, manufacturing, and retail businesses or nonprofits for the 12 market categories of materials. So in every town and every city and every region, we really do need a place for everything and everything in its place. Here are some examples of resource recovery parks and resource recovery centers. You can see this is a simple one in San Luis Obispo, California. It's at a privately owned landfill. And we recently heard a presentation from the Waste Management Authority in San Luis Obispo, and it really talked about the public-private partnership of this resource recovery park and the real incentive that the private sector landfill has for investing in this park is that they are saving landfill space. And so it's been a real win-win. So when you drive up and you bring your self-haul materials, you're directed to this very simple bunker area to separate metal, yard trimming, C&D. And, you pay a fee to come in. If you refuse to separate, you can go directly to the landfill face, but then you have to pay an extra fee. It's called a facility use fee or an FU fee. As a result, 97% of self-haulers separate their materials, and this has saved millions of dollars of landfill space for the private sector operator. This is another example. This is actually in Berkeley. This is the urban ore operation that's out at the transfer station in Berkeley. City staff and help generators unload recyclable material, and then urban ore is actually paid $47.74, the same as the landfill fee, to take materials that are reusable from the transfer station floor and bring them to their facility across town. So this is a win-win for the city of Berkeley. They reduce trash going to the landfill. The self-haulers have already paid to come in. They're just coming in to dump their load. Urban ore takes the reusable materials, is paid that same disposal fee to properly dispose of the materials through reuse, and they then sell them at their restore. And they handle all kinds of things there: lumber, building materials, household goods. And then here's another example. This is Davis Street in San Leandro, California. This is operated by Waste Management, and they operated a transfer station there since the landfill closed in the 1970s. And that facility was a regional magnet for self-haul. Well, several years ago, they closed the pit for self-haul. So self-haulers no longer just directly unload stuff into the pit and have it pushed into the transfer station floor for transfer out to the landfill. All self-haul material is processed on a picking line. And it turns out one of the motivations for Waste Management was to reduce fees to the landfill, because Waste Management, like a lot of operations, has different operations centers. The transfer station has a different revenue generating model than the landfill. Every ton that they don't send to the landfill is a savings to the transfer station.
2 minutes, Ruth.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I thought we had 15 minutes.
Yeah, but it's 13 after.
Huh. Okay.
Okay, you got 3 minutes. Okay. Stop talking, talk about more.
All right. Well, we'll go worldwide tour now. So here's Monterey Regional Waste Management District. They're now called Regen Monterey. They have a last chance mercantile, buyback center, resource recovery facility, construction and demolition processing, composting, anaerobic digestion, and landfill. Here's an overall picture of their site. That's their last chance mercantile, very similar to urban ore, where reusable items that are taken to the landfill are actually diverted from disposal through reuse. Here's an indoor picture. There's their material recovery facility and their picking line for C&D. They also have co-location of a compost operation and a pilot scale anaerobic digestion facility for high solids digestion of food scraps. Here's a whirlwind tour down to Texas Disposal System, where they have a resale area, material recovery facility, construction and demolition processing, composting, carbon forestry, and Gardenville retail and eco-industrial park, and a landfill. And here's a picture of their reuse area and their equivalent of urban ore and the last chance mercantile, which is their resale area. They have an artist in residence program. They have a single stream recycling facility, metal recycling, compost facility, and then that carbon sequestration retail area for where they actually sell plants. And then the last example is from actually Göteborg in Sweden. That is the reuse park, and it has a secondhand boutique, a recycling center, personal shoppers in reverse, regulated materials, building materials reuse, bike repair, compost distribution, and a coffee shop. So here's the overview. Here's what it looks like when people drive in and they meet with their shoppers in reverse, their assistants there, and then they're helping them unload and recycle properly. They got a band in there to entertain the troops. They got clowns for the children. In the bathroom is the art center where you can purchase the art off the walls. This is a dog that can sort materials into 6 different categories. So if the dog can do it, you can too. And here is the King of Sweden getting a t-shirt from the recycling center. All right, well, there's your tour. I'll stop sharing and it's back to you, Rick.
Oh, good job, Ruth. Next up is Bailey Epperly. Bailey is the manager of the resource recorder in West Virginia. You're on, Bailey. Hello?
Awesome, thank you. Just sharing my screen. One moment, please.
Yep.
Does it look okay on your end?
Yeah, says reuse. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone, I'm Bailey and I work with Coalfield Development as the Reuse Corridor Manager. I just want to start off by saying thanks so much for having me and I'm really excited. So Coalfield Development works in a coal-impacted region to rebuild the Appalachian economy through a just transition from the ground up. With that being said, we are a triple bottom line organization, meaning we consider people, planet, and profit equally in our decision making. And we use this model for a just transition through our 3 core capacities. The first being incubating social enterprises, and then hiring unemployed folks through those social enterprises, and revitalizing dilapidated properties as a licensed community developer and general contractor.
Bailey, thank you.
Yeah. Was it just that was in the way?
You're all set.
Sorry about that. So this is what our training model looks like. We hire folks with barriers to success and employment. This can include folks disenfranchised by declining industries, the coal industry very prevalent in our region. It can also include previously incarcerated individuals, along with folks who may be recovering from substance use disorder. And this is what a typical work week looks like for one of our trainees. So they'll have 33 hours of on-the-job training in one of our social enterprises, 6 hours in the classroom pursuing an associate's degree or a certificate of some kind, and then finally 3 hours of personal development. And this can include things like life skills, financial literacy, really things that may have been denied to these folks that some of us may take for granted. And this really just helps them have more tools in their toolbox to tackle the challenges of life. So next, here's an example of one of our crews that you see there on the left. This is our deconstruction crew. So they go into buildings and houses that are dilapidated, and they are able to extract the salvageable wood and materials, and in return, it's upcycled into things that you see on the right there, which is made by our other trainees. So this graph shows the relationship of the recycling economy internationally. It might be kind of hard to see there, but all of the white lines or the lighter blue lines toward the right, that's what China was importing. So the US, which is that tall blue line towards the left there, that's how much we were exporting. So the world was exporting a ton of recyclables to China, and along with those recyclables, there was a lot of trash as well. They became very overwhelmed with this, so they enacted the SWORD Act in 2018. And we definitely have felt effects of this regionally and locally as well. Appalachia is a region where we don't have a whole lot of infrastructure to tackle these sort of things. And so often we're left with mass pollution in our streams, in our woods, even in people's properties and homes as well. And these are just some numbers that exemplify that struggling recycling infrastructure in our region. So in Charleston, recycling was halted. Wise County, Virginia, composting and glass recycling was halted. And in Huntington, West Virginia, where I live, the recycling drop-off system was facing severe challenges. So since our region is heavily lacking in infrastructure, we like to think a lot about how can we strengthen opportunities already present and foster collaboration that may already exist. So you can see an example here in the top graphic. Marshall University produces a lot of food waste. We produce a lot of sawdust in our wood shop. So let's combine those two to create high grade, good quality compost that can even be sold back into the community as well. Below that, you see another example with our partners in Wayne County, where old textiles that would traditionally be thrown away can be shredded and upcycled to be used for fibers to grow mushrooms. So that thinking really continues with our partners throughout the whole region, in instances where County A does not have, $5 million to replicate what County B has. So instead of replicating, let's get these counties talking together so that they can share resources, because I may have a supply of something and you may have a demand, and all that could really be missing in some cases is logistics. So we're just really here to help provide that support. And this is a map of Central Appalachia. The highlighted counties represent areas where these collaborations are happening. So the green highlighted counties that you see there are where we have direct partnerships and collaborations taking place. And the yellow counties are places where there's kind of a spillover effect from those primary partnerships. And then this is kind of all what formed the Reuse Corridor Initiative. So we're a coalition of businesses, individual stakeholders, and communities throughout Central Appalachia who are building a market around reuse, upcycling, and recycling. And what you see here is what our partnerships look like right now. So everything from manufacturers, recyclers, development authorities, nonprofits, governments, colleges, and businesses, both big and small. So kind of every type of organization imaginable, because every organization experiences the cost of waste. So what does a reuse corridor look like? Well, we're creating a value chain by connecting stakeholders to value-added products. So we're transforming about 200,000 pounds of traditionally landfill-destined materials into value-added products each year. And we do this through sharing equipment, ideas, resources. I help facilitate and host monthly meetings where all of the stakeholders throughout the region can get together and brainstorm on various things. And that's always, very helpful for everyone, and just a good time as well to have that camaraderie. So you can see some examples of the result of our partnerships here. The first graphic, you can see some wood that's been taken out of houses, as I mentioned previously, and it was turned into a spice cabinet. Below that, you can see some plastic that's been shredded down and melted by one of our partners and turned into coasters. And below that, you can see food being turned into compost. So we're reducing barriers and costs of engagement for communities, businesses, and governments to participate in these sustainable practices, which can be even harder to do so in Appalachia. And this is an example of the type of work that we support. So 2,000 tires were pulled out of the Tug Fork River in Williamson, West Virginia, and they were upcycled. And now that river is an economic driver for that community. This was one of the Reuse Corridor's first collection events in 2020, and I was actually at this event as a volunteer. You can see me there to the left. I'm kind of tiny with a yellow hat, but it's pretty crazy because I went to this as a student. This was before I had any idea of what the Reuse Corridor was or what it might entail. So fast forward 2 years later, and I'm now working for it. It's just pretty cool. But this was a great event. This was early in the COVID surge. And so it was really nice to, be with other volunteers, be with community, and have folks drop off their electronic waste. So we were able to unload that for them, put it into the boxes, and then we had a partner come and pick up everything we collected. This is an example of other collection events that we partner with and help host. So what you see here is a hard to recycle items collection event. So you can see mattresses, tires, and e-waste. Other things that will be collected at Charm events like this will be books, medical supplies, medical equipment, textiles, things along those lines. And continuing with that mindset of how do we utilize what is available to us and around us, Coalfield Development purchased this abandoned factory that sits on about 5 acres in Wayne County, Huntington, West Virginia, that we are currently in the process of revitalizing to be a resource recovery park and a hub for the reuse corridor. The Black Diamond facility was first developed around the late 1910s, and it was continually used for industrial activities such as the ones that you can see listed here. This facility was used to make components of military vehicles to support both World War I and II, and mining equipment parts were also manufactured. Railroad train cars were salvaged and restored, and electric power transformers were disassembled in the 1980s. As far as the financial aspect to the build out of this vision, we have received grant funding from multiple sources, such as $2 million from the Appalachian Regional Commission, $500,000 from EPA Brownfields, $75,000 from USDA, $50,000 from ARC, and $8 million from EDA. The $500,000 ARC funding allowed us to create a strategic plan for the reuse corridor. I'm happy to drop that in the chat if anyone is interested in that. It's pretty lengthy, it's pretty wordy, but I think it can be useful to skim through depending on the work that you may be in. So we were able to use that funding to create that strategic plan, and this really opened it up for us to be able to receive that $2 million from the ARC, and that helped us fund staff such as myself, host collection events, coordinate logistics, and buy some needed material. The EPA Brownfields grant allowed us to remediate the soil. This was a very contaminated facility, which is a large part of the reason we were able to purchase it for a great price. And I'm very happy to say that we've finished up soil remediation and we're almost ready to dive into the construction phase. The USDA grant money went towards hosting collection events, logistics, transportation, and materials needed for that. And finally, we were recently awarded $8 million from EDA as Coalfield and other regional partners were announced as winners of the Build Back Regional Challenge, Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And a lot of this money is going towards building out our community makerspace and helping us acquire necessary equipment. So what you see here is a mock-up of what the space can look like. So the Black Diamond building will serve as a storage facility, an aggregation hub, and an open air market with community maker spaces. We're starting it on a small scale with units that are somewhat entry level so that we can allow plenty of room for expansion in the years to come. Items that we're looking at purchasing right now for our community makerspace, hopefully we're going to be acquiring some of these in the near future, include things like an industrial 3D printing station, commercial welding station, a stationary carpentry saw set, laptop and hand tools for operating equipment, tools, storage and cabinets, PPE and safety equipment, and administration funding for staff supervision and onboarding. So part of that EDA Build Back Better funding is also going to the Black Diamond facility for Solar Hauler. Solar Hauler is also one of Coalfield Development's social enterprises, and they're actually the largest and one of the really one of the starts of solar installers in our region. So they'll be able to have a headquarters here, and they'll have plenty of space for storage and training there as well. Here's another great image depicting what our makerspace and reuse corridor storage and aggregation hub can look like. As you can see, if you look a little closely here, you might have to squint a little bit, but you can see some of these sections are labeled. So you can see electronics on the right side there, lumber, workshop space. We plan on having designated areas for the workstations as well as for materials. So some of our partners and stakeholders from the reuse corridor can store materials here, drop them off, someone else can pick them up, so do transfers and things like that. And there will also be storage for products that community members can come in and extract and use and go to one of the workshops and make something that they may want to make out of it. So I'm very excited about that. And it looks nowhere near like this yet. It's pretty abandoned, pretty creepy looking right now, but we actually are already storing our mini excavator there, as well as some wood that our deconstruction crew has salvaged.
You have 2 minutes, Bailey.
Thank you so much. This space will be extremely helpful for our reuse corridor, because often partner A may have a material that partner B wants to intake, but they may not be ready to take it. So that involves partner A holding on to it longer, then they can't intake new material. So this does come up sometimes. And so I'm just very excited to be able to offer a space for our folks to be able to store their stuff so that they can continue doing the work that they're doing. And so with all of this, we're remediating the Black Diamond property to transform products and to empower the potential of individuals, communities, and our partners within the reuse corridor. Thank you so much for your time, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Okay, so our next speaker is Steve Simmons. He's the president of Gershman, Brickler and Brackner, GBB. GBB was one of the original founders of the National Recycling Coalition, Harvey Gershman. And Steve is going to talk about projects that GBB have around resource recovery parks. Steve?
Yes, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. Is everyone hearing and seeing the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Success. Thanks. I will be speaking this afternoon on a project we've been assisting Kent County Department of Public Works for now a couple of years, and this is somewhat an update. I've made some presentations on this over the past couple of years, but we've certainly been working hard and making good progress. I'm going to skip through kind of the background on the company. Most of you probably know us, and if you don't, I'll be happy to talk later. Kent County, Michigan is our client. It's the economic hub of Western Michigan, home to the city of Grand Rapids. It's the second largest city in Michigan. Its economy is basically manufacturing and ag-based, and they generate 625,000 tons a year of municipal solid waste within the county. The county's current system consists of a single stream residential recycling facility, a 600 ton a day waste energy facility, 1,000 ton a day landfill with all the amenities, transfer stations, drop-offs. It's what really in the industry we called it back in the 1990s for us gray-haired boomers, the integrated solid waste management system. And it's changed very little in the last 30 years. So why change? What's causing them to need to look different? Well, the landfill is running out of life. There's less than 10 years left on this site. If they want another site, they've got to go fight the political battles of siting a new landfill in the county. The waste energy facility is 30 plus years old. It's aging out. Even the single stream MRF is 15 years old. It's at least a generation or two old technology. It needs reinvestment. Waste generation has continued to increase at about a 2.3% compound growth rate. And the county overall only operates at about a 17% recycling rate. This is a bottle bill state. So a lot of the materials that might traditionally be in the single stream get recovered and returned through the deposit systems. They had citizens asking for more effective recycling services, local industry demanding zero waste to landfill options, and increasing scrutiny and long-term on landfill and monitoring costs. Kent County is a PFAS hotbed. So, landfills and monitoring, it's a very big topic. So what is the Sustainable Business Park? Well, it's a public-private partnership, was established as an integrated material recovery and manufacturing complex. It's will be situated on 250 acres that were already pre-purchased for the next landfill. we've signed a project development agreement with a joint venture to come and build the anchor tenant facility, much like when you're building out a campus type environment, you need to get that big anchor facility to get things kicked off. In 2018, we wrote a master plan for the business park, and we set visions to reduce the landfill waste by 90% by 2030. The master plan was put together by a multidisciplinary team led by GBB, but we had economic development professionals, local land use and zoning, public outreach, stakeholder communications, and a really sophisticated team to go together and help the DPW put together the master plan for the park. The master plan was approved by the DPW board in August of 2018. So with that together, one of the first steps in planning facilities and new infrastructures, of course, is doing a detailed waste characterization study to the standards prescribed by the ASTM. So we spent 12 days sorting through Kent County waste at the waste energy facility, the transfer station, and the South Kent landfill. And we characterized the waste received by the type of truck, which would give us some kind of indication of which market did it come from, residential, commercial, C&D, or self-haul. I won't go through all the results, but one of the surprising and disappointing things to find in the waste shed study was the amount of recyclables that were still in the disposal stream. You can see there an estimated 76,000 tons a year of good quality fiber, bottles, and cans are today still in the disposal stream headed to the landfill and the waste energy plant. There's only about 25,000 tons that are recovered at the county residential MRF. So for every ton that gets recovered, there's close to 3 tons that are lost. And that's just not acceptable to the leaders. So we put together a request for proposals, went to the market for the anchor tenant, and we structured it as a procurement for accepting and processing 400,000 tons a year of MSW to recover the traditional recyclables that are still in that disposal stream, to convert the organic waste into renewable natural gas and compost, and to produce other proprietary products as the generator or the technology could produce. It was a worldwide procurement conducted through the Kent County Department of Fiscal Services. We went out on June 20, right in the teeth of COVID. COVID has slowed the project down just a little bit. In September, though, we received 7 responses. We did an extensive review and evaluation of the technologies. We actually spent another year evaluating, visiting facilities, talking, evaluation, and finally made a recommendation to the Board of Public Works for the anchor tenant. And in March of this year, the project development agreement was approved by the DPW board. This is a quick overview of what the proposed anchor tenant facility will look like, and I'll go into more detail. At the waste receiving end, we wanted to structure it so that it was flexible and it could meet the various needs and requirements of how waste is collected in Kent County. So think of it as having 3 doors, a single stream recycling door, a mixed MSW door, and a source separated organics door. And this will allow the DPW to charge differential tipping fees to promote desired outcomes. The other point I want to make on this, collection in the county, commercial is typically you would find, but on the residential side, only the city of Grand Rapids collects residential waste with a municipal fleet. The rest of the county is all subscription residential, and there's only one town that has mandatory recycling. Most of the county is subscription residential with opt-in recycling. And that's You know, those of us who study systems will know that's probably the least performing recycling system out there, but it is what is prevalent in the county and how waste is collected in that county. So that's why we needed this kind of system. In the processing, a traditional single stream MRF is envisioned here. Also, ability to take in commercial loads. Up there, I've seen a lot of commercial loads that were half cardboard and half styrofoam and plastic wrap, and there's not a MRF in the area that can accept and process that material. So we need to capture that very high value material. In the mix, and over to the top, you have the organics processing system. There we're going to use the Oryx Pros from Energia. And one of the great things about that material, it's very good at processing organics from a mixed waste stream, or even organics that are source separated, but still have a lot of contamination in them. As those of you who've seen, you know, a container behind a restaurant, particularly post-consumer organics, they have a lot of contamination. In the middle is the mixed waste processing element. And from there, the traditional recyclables, the PET, the containers, the fiber that's recovered can be directed over towards the MRF side of the building and processed and cleaned there. The organics are sent over to the organic side of the facility. And then the residue stream, which consists of a lot of plastic film and low grade fiber, can be recovered for the integrated board manufacturing facility that I'll speak of in just a minute. And finally, the residue is consolidated for shipment to either a landfill or the county's waste energy facility. Bit more about the organics side of it. Again, I spoke to the Oryx Press from Energia. Those of you in California, there's one out in like Sun Valley in the LA basin. This is a very good machine. It's been installed in multiple locations around, and it squeezes the mixed stream of organics, squeezes the liquid out of it, which is further processed and then injected into the anaerobic digesters. From there, it'll be cleaned pipeline quality gas and put into the pipeline. Because of the pre-processing up front, the digestate that comes out of it is very suitable for compost applications. And so from that will come compost that can be used as a local fertilizer. The other thing that's unique here is the integrated board manufacturing. This is a proposal from Continuous Materials to accept the low grade fibers, and you know, I mean like wet fibers, multi-material packaging that's got fiber, it's got plastic in it, materials that just are not in the traditional recycling stream and have no value market. That plus plastic fiber or plastic film are mixed in a proprietary message and process, and a construction board is made out of it. It's a 4x8 sheet of board that has an application in roofing and re-roofing of flat roofs, as you might find in a data warehouse, a data center, a warehouse, a big box retail store. And the facility should produce enough 150 million square feet of roofing board a year, which would be enough to re-roof about 1,500 Home Depot stores. So just a note on the benefits. What do we expect to get out of it? Well, we expect to recover about 43,000 tons a year more of incremental recyclables. These are the traditional recyclables that can be baled and shipped to markets. 76,000 tons a year of low-grade fiber and film converted into construction board. We expect to produce 370 million BTUs of pipeline renewable natural gas and have 93,000 tons a year of digestate cake fertilizer that can go to the local agriculture. We took a look at using the EPA WARM model and looked at the greenhouse gas reductions available from this park, processing the full value of the processable waste in the county. And what we found is it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the county an approximate 300,000 tons a year, using the WARM model as our calculation guide. Few points on the keys to success so far: a visionary leadership on the DPW. I mean, the DPW director looks at that land, 250 acres of farmland, which is sitting next to the almost full landfill that they have today, and saying, I do not want that to become another landfill. We've got to do something else with it. And wouldn't it be great if we could turn this into to an economic center? Acknowledgement that doing the right thing will cost more in the short term.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, so it's going to cost more. Willingness to pay for that, having a multidisciplined project team, extensive public outreach and communication, control of a site. Path forward, we're in engineering design right now to finalize 30% for cost estimating and contracting. We've got to apply for our environmental, land use, and flow control permits approvals. Got to finish out the feedstock and the contract negotiations, the lease, and then finance the whole of the facility. Groundbreaking expected in 2025. That's the presentation.
All right, that's quite a project. Okay, so we're into the, I guess I'm off mute. We're in the question and answer mode. Let's start just with the three of you. All right, is there any questions from the panelists to the other panelists, or you want to make a comment? Anybody? Bailey, Ruth?
Nope.
Okay. Host, do we have questions in our chat box that you see that we should ask?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions here regarding links for resources, if we could share those. And I hear a question from Tony. How many tons are there at the park, at the CAOA City Park? Any idea about just the amount of waste that's generated by the parks?
Which park?
Here, Tony, if you wouldn't mind specifying the question that you had there, we can get our speakers to address it. And I'll unmute you as well.
Yes, I'm talking about the park that you presented at the end that process organics along single stream and mix. This park is designed to about how many tons to process, and about the area needed to implement a park like that one.
What's your throughput, Steve, and what's your waste?
Oh, okay. I still didn't. I missed it. So the business park is designed for 400,000 tons a year. It's from the whole of the county, and the whole of the county produces a little over 600,000 tons a year of MSW. Now there's industrial waste streams. There's C&D. There's, it's estimated at times there's close to 1 million tons a year of total solid waste generated in the county.
So when you're done with this and it's all built out, but what the landfill will still be needed, how much do you think is going to go to the landfill or the burner? I'm not sure which you're planning for.
When it's built out. So the target is to get to a 90% reduction. Now,
okay.
That's the goal. It'll take a while. We've got an anchor that's going to get, in addition to the single stream recycling that's already going on, that's going to get us another 50 to 60%. There's still going to be some residue. There's lots of acreage there to try to find the next technology that can, take what's in the residue and try to find a useful a use for it. This is just, as we style it, the anchor tenant, the thing to get us really started.
Right. Did you say who that was? I know you went through.
It's a joint venture between Energia and Continuous Materials.
And
So it's that's the private part of the private-public partnership.
What's the product? Energia. It's got to be power. What's the other?
Energia is they're a large organics processor.
Okay.
They've got several facilities around the world, and there's a couple of nice big ones in California, down in the LA and up in San Francisco. Continuous Materials has been a startup company. They're now 51% owned by Waste Management, but they've had a long development history of looking to try to develop use for low quality fiber and films. At one point in their evolution, they were making cement kiln fuel, but that's a low value product, and so they continued on their evolutionary process and have a technology now that can make a construction board out of it.
So Bailey, how do you think your project would fit somewhere in this sustainability park that Steve is building? When you look at it, how do you feel about it?
I think components of it could, yeah, definitely.
What would you do first? You have in mind?
I think the first thing that we're focusing on right now is really just building out that community makerspace. Coalfield development, we really have a big focus on workforce development, training. The number one thing you hear in West Virginia, the number one thing you hear in Appalachia is jobs. So when it comes to logistics and other things, the community, the public doesn't care so much as long as we're creating jobs and getting people trained. And so I think that's our priority right now. Well, first, obviously, is construction. So the state of the building now, you can't put a community makerspace in it just yet. So that's step one for us. And then I think we can, once we start to get some of this equipment for our community makerspace, we can start to think more about direct data, waste diversion, and some of these bigger picture things that we've heard about today.
Ruth, do you have a comment on this?
No.
No.
You should open it up to questions, Rick.
I'll take questions. Is there anybody in the unmute group and who wants to ask a question? Did we have any more in the chat that wasn't taken care of?
There's one more question that was asking about, I think this is a question for Steve. How do you plan to collect enough film and low-grade fiber to create that much cover board?
So it's what's in the disposal stream. The disposal stream in the county comes here first, and we'll use a mixed waste processing element to recover it. And so looking at the assay, the characteristics of the disposal stream, which is what part of our waste study was about. There's mostly enough there. This is also the DPW views it as a regional facility. They are the economic hub. There are other cities, counties around. There's a lot of industry, a lot of going on in Western Michigan. So, while the sponsors the DPW, we do want to look at industry to provide their industrial waste. Western Michigan is the hub of furniture manufacturing. Herman Miller, Steelcase, Hayworth, they're all there. And they are the kind of big corporations pushing zero waste to landfill strategies. And they were some of the corporate sponsors of this, wanting to see capacity built here.
Any other questions coming in from the chat? Any questions coming from the general group at this point? I have a few, but so my deal is that, it's funny that we did one of our early recycling studies in 1979 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the first thing the supervisor met us off the plane and told us that this is a stewardship community. We're Lutherans here, and we believe in stewardship of the land. And they were making a very interesting attempt to try to recover materials. So I'm looking, and it was January, and he was burying garbage, putting snow on top of it. That's all. He had no dirt to put on top. So it was in the landfill, snow on top, and later in the spring they pumped it, but it was pretty ugly. I'm just curious, in this sustainability center, What about the C&D? What about the bulky waste? What about some of those other things that are not picked up in a curbside collection?
Well, that's phase two. You know, you gotta walk before you run. So there's 250 acres there. We have certainly looked at, what would be the follow on? Is there C&D recycling capacity needed? Absolutely there is. There's very little C&D recycling capacity in Western Michigan because there's very, very cheap landfills. But as the sponsoring agency, you can only do so much so quickly. And it's taken quite some time to do this. So I've certainly looked at that. There could be other specialty materials to look at. So yes.
So Ruth, could you add one of your facilities that you see to this sustainability project? You got plenty of acreage. You think that would work?
Well, of course. So the concept of a resource recovery park is that it's for everything, right? And so if there's acreage there, we of course would want to see an opportunity for the self-haul. I mean, that's the major fraction of materials that are unaddressed by municipal programs, self-haul and C&D. And then the concept of source separation, which is really key component of the resource recovery park. There's a lot of back-end processing proposed for Kent County, which and then there's some other processing. But is there more opportunity for reuse? Is there more opportunity to address the materials before they become MSW? Is there more acreage for that? And can we do a better job of separating before we actually have to process the mixed waste? Would be, maybe something, an opportunity for the future. Sure.
Well, we're almost at the end of our hour.
Here's another follow-up question. Steve, would you like to ask your question over the live channels here?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at the fiberboard plastic product that you were talking about, and on the website it does say it's fully recyclable. So just curious if there's some sort of mandatory take back program where you guys are taking it back to continuous materials and then it's being re-engineered back into board, or kind of how that's been thought up. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, that's a separate company. That's not our website, right? We're solid waste consultants. So Continuous talks about it in that context. I know what they've done is, they're recycling their production scrap. That's not necessarily recycling from a roof that's been out there 15 years. But in all honesty, they haven't had any product out there for 15 years. This is a relatively new product, so nothing's come back. Could it come back and be remanufactured? Yes, I believe it could, understanding it. But it could be coming back from a location in Colorado back to a manufacturing facility in Kent County. You'd have to look at what's the life cycle part of that. So they may be a little aggressive in affirming, it's recyclable. I think you couldn't say it's not, but there's been no opportunity to recycle it yet.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's just I'll put it in the chat, but it says it's, they tout the benefits and then they say Everboard is fully recyclable. So anytime I see that, I tend to question it and see, but it sounds like a great product if it's capturing two waste streams that are going to be landfilled anyway. So yeah, I'll definitely keep an eyeball on that. Thank you.
Okay.
And for Bailey and Ruth and then Steve, how do you handle mom and pop and the self-hauled loads? Do you process them at the door, or are you handling that in your facilities, Bailey?
I think that they're a big part of, what I mapped out there, part of the reuse corridor. A few of our stakeholders and partners are these, smaller recyclers, smaller aggregators and collectors. So they're invited to join in like everyone else in our collaborative monthly meetings and And yeah, they're a part of the connection. Not sure how that'll pan out once we have the resource park, but
I clean my house and I have a load of furniture and clothing and some other stuff. Can I just put them in a truck and deliver it to your facility when it gets open?
I think that's part of the idea.
Okay. Can I do that for you, Ruth? Can I separate my stuff and bring it in a truck and take it to these resource recovery parks? And find a place to
And
put them?
there's a question in the chat about funding as well. So the way that these resource recovery parks have evolved is at landfills and transfer stations. And so these existing landfills, like the Cold Canyon landfill example that I gave in San Luis Obispo County, that investment was made by the landfill and it has saved them airspace, which is invaluable to them. So same thing with the transfer stations. They have invested in the case of waste management, the technology for separating the materials that come in from the self-haul that are aggregated, and that saves them, again, tipping fees at the landfill. And then finally, that Berkeley example, where the city is actually paying Urban Ore to remove materials from the transfer station that would have otherwise gone into the landfill. They pay them the same amount that they pay waste management for landfilling to remove the reusable materials. So it's a win-win-win opportunity to recover materials. Just a plug for reuse, it's so much more valuable if the item is reusable than actually recyclable. A door that's sold as a door is much more valuable than a door that is, mulch, ground up into mulch, right? So it's so much better if we can preserve the value of the materials that are coming to these landfills and transfer stations through reuse first, then recycle and compost.
Great, good answer. So Steve, are you planning for the self-haul loads and how you're gonna, in your process?
Yes, the DPW provides citizen drop-offs at their locations at the transfer station and the landfill today. There will be one, they'll either keep what they've got at the landfill once it closes, or they'll move it across the road over into the business park someplace. It may or may not be at the anchor tenant facility because, there's always a concern of citizens in their cars being around big trucks, right? It's better to kind of keep them separate. So it may be across the road. It may be, leave where it's at, but they're definitely will continue to provide that service for their citizens, like they provide a household hazardous waste drop-off at the recycling facility, at the recycling center. So they are a full suite service provider to their citizenry.
Okay, well, that's the program. We're at time. All three of you did a great job. I learned a lot, and it's interesting to know where our state of the art in our field are. I think host, we're done, right?
We are, and just to direct your attention to the chat window here, everybody, there is a Gather Town gathering for everybody to join and be able to participate together in a virtual event. So please join us there. It's going to be a separate link here that you can share in the chat and click through, and also let us know how this went. How did day one go? Please fill out the short survey for the event. And thank you, speakers. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, participants.
All right. Thank you, NRC.
Thanks so much. Have a good evening, everyone.